Good evening, folks. Welcome back to In the Chill Tonight, episode number 11. I'm here with my good friend Pete. Good morning. Or
Hey,
wait,
Ray.
good evening, Pete.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's even back here. It's evening, man.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, when we started this YouTube channel, this cast, it was a few months ago, and our first cast was me interviewing Pete about a really cool story back when he was up in the New England. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, please do yourself a favor, check it out. Uh, Pete, help me with the title. It was Brass on the Floor.
Yeah, brass on the floor.
Brass on the Floor.
Yeah.
Really, really good episode. But look, we're in our 11th episode, and I sort of thought we should. Um, some people might call it a second season. We're not, but we're want to sort of repeat that energy that we had with Pete in that first show. So I thought that I would interview Pete again, have a conversation with him about his undercover work. And what I mean by that was it wasn't long ago. He and I were sort of shooting the crap here, and a story came up that I didn't want to hang up the phone because as he was going through it, I was sort of drawn into the story, and it was one of those stories that unfortunately could have went the wrong way. Thank God it didn't, in terms of Pete and officer safety. So I asked Pete if he would share that with us, and he said he would.
All
So
right. So we start from the beginning, eh? Um.
yeah, yeah, yes,
So you look. It's 1976, and the United States government hires about 350 brand new ATF agents in a program they called Concentrated Urban Enforcement. And they spread these 350 agents out across 5 concentrated urban enforcement or Q cities. And the purpose was to try to in try to interdict gun trafficking and violent crime. So I had been a police officer back in Connecticut prior to getting hired with ATF for Operation Q. And 76, I'm new on the job. As a matter of fact, some of us were so new on the job, we didn't even have a set of credentials yet. We were given a letter from the SAC, Special Agent in Charge, describing who we are, and we folded it up to put in our little badge case. We had a badge. That's one thing they had, but we folded the letter up to put in the badge case in case we were ever stopped. But one of the reasons that a lot of us got hired is they wanted to put young guys out on the street, and they expected you to do a certain amount of undercover work. Now, there's undercover work and there's undercover work. I mean, some of the undercover stuff you see on TV, you get backed up with all your identification, false identification. You live amongst the criminals for months and months at a time. A lot of the undercover work that we did back then wasn't like that. We might go to work in a suit in the morning and wind up in soft clothes doing some undercover meet in the evening, and that might last a few days. So what I was involved with is I had been working with an informant that actually the boss hooked me up with because I was new to the Boston
yeah,
area. I
right.
was from Connecticut. I didn't know anybody. So the boss hooked me up with this CI. He says, run with this guy, see what you could do. We've never used him before. Let's see if we could get him credible and all that. So I started hanging out with this guy, and we frequented a particular restaurant down the South Shore of Boston in the town of Quincy. To other people, it might be Quincy when you read the word, but it's Quincy. And
Okay.
so I would hang in this restaurant bar type of thing, and there were lots of people coming in. Some people went in for dinner, and they had a big bar, and there were all kinds of people of all kinds of persuasions coming in and out in little cliques. So I got introduced to lots of these folks, and And I would stop by there, a couple of times a week, go in there in the evening, spend some time. And after a while, we got to know people. So one day, we meet a guy who says he knows a guy, and he's got a sawed-off shotgun he wants to sell. So we make arrangements to do it, and
that's a pretty big deal, right? A
well,
sawed-off
yeah,
shotgun.
it's a 10-year beef. If it's an unregistered sawed-off shotgun, simple possession's 10 years. If you got it in your car gets seized. As a matter of fact, the undercover car I was driving at that time is like a 72 or 73 Ford Torino, right? It was a brown with a black Landau top, and I had the Italian horn hanging from the mirror, a big red one. Right. So they don't get the Maloik, and, so anyway, I'm driving this car, and we set up the deal in the bar that night, and it's set up for the next morning. So at that time, I lived way down the South Shore, almost near Cape Cod, and I called the guy in the morning from my house. I say, hey, we talked last night. You're going to sell this thing and blah blah blah. Yeah. Come on out, stop by. So now I'm by myself. So I called the boss. I say, hey, on my way to work, I'm going to stop and I'm going to buy this sawed-off shotgun from this guy, and I'll be in, and I'll be in as soon as that's done. Today you got to have all kinds of a backup. You got to have a cover team. You got to have a wire. All this other stuff. We had nothing. I had a little Charter Arms 5-shot that I was using undercover, and I wrapped an elastic around the butt so it wouldn't slip down my pants when I tucked it in my pants, because you don't use a holster. You're a bad guy. You don't use a holster or shit.
So what I have in my head right now is like sort of like Starsky and Hutch type setting here.
Oh yeah. In my car, I kept a little bag, and in the bag I had gold chains, I had rings, gold rings. I had a wallet with some fake ID in it, and all backed up. But in any event, I'm driving to work. I cut off the highway. I go in this little town. I pick up this shotgun. I think I paid $75 for it. And I go boom, driving back up to Boston, and we take it into evidence. And what we're doing is we're just continuing to build cases. We're meeting other people down there at the bar, and we're buying guns from them, and we're continuing to build cases. So this isn't something that we were gonna what we do in and out. We were gonna go in, buy it, and bust. We weren't gonna do that. We were gonna keep working and digging and see where are these guns coming from? Are these people all related? What's going on here? So we were prepared to spend some time. So one night I'm going down. I'm heading home, and I'm gonna stop off at this bar, and I'm gonna see if I meet my informant there, and I'm going to throw him some bucks, for setting up doing some of the work he was doing for us. So anyway, I pull into the parking lot of the restaurant, and it's packed that night, and I'm trying to find a place to park, and I see a bunch of guys over near the back door, and so I get out of my car and I start walking over there, and there's a guy there. I hear his voice. I recognize his voice, but I don't recognize him. And he's telling the other guy standing next to him, that's him.
Oh,
shoot him. And the next thing I know, and so I'm halfway between my car and this door, and we're probably separated now by about 15 feet or so. And all of a sudden, I realized that this guy whose voice I'm recognized, I don't recognize him because he shaved his full beard off. Had I had seen him in there, I might not have stopped.
Right.
But anyway, well, he's telling this other guy, shoot him. And this guy is now pointing a He's got a Ruger 1022 22 caliber rifle cut down to about this long with a silencer on the end of it. And he's got it raised up and he's pointing it at me. And the other guy's saying, shoot, shoot now, shoot. And so now I'm starting to, I got my hand, I'm starting to back up a little bit. I say, what's going on here, man? What? And as I'm doing that, I'm turning sideways and I'm starting to reach for that little Charter Arms revolver that I have in my belt. So I finally was able to put one of the cars in the parking lot between me and them, and I stepped around. And now I am drawing my firearm down by my side, and I am getting ready to drop behind the car. And I figured I gotta shoot it out with this guy.
Wow.
So I'm talking to them. I said, what is going on? Like, what is up with you guys, man? I knew the guy now. I said, Sandy, what is up with you, man? And he says, hey, you know that shotgun? You rented that shotgun. We want it back. I said, what? I said, I bought that shotgun. No. You rented it. We want it back. Now, what I think they were doing is they were probably a little worried now. Like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? Muffalardi, I used to call myself. You know, as the muffaletta. It's a sandwich down in New Orleans. And I figured that maybe they were getting a little cold feet and figured that if I was a cop or a Fed or whatever, I would never give the gun back.
Right.
So I said, hey, look, I said, I bought the gun. I'll get it back to you. I'll get it back to you. So in any event, we start talking, and the guy with the gun now is put the gun down. And what they're doing is they're sending there was some other people there, and one of them was this guy with the gun's sister. And he sends his sister and her boyfriend out to buy a box of 22 cartridges. So they're waiting for these cartridges to come back. And by this time, this guy, Sandy, leaves. And it's me and this guy with the gun. We're talking. And so I say, hey, you want to sell that gun? And he said, yeah, I think I do. I said, well, you know, what about the silencer? Does it work? He says, well, I'm waiting for some bullets. He said, I'll take you out. I'll show you. So I stayed around with him. The people came back. They gave him the box of 22 cartridges. And he says, follow me. So I follow him, and we drive to a park about a couple of miles away from the restaurant. It's dark now. It's really pitch black outside. It's probably around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And we walk out into this park, and we go to the edge of the park where there's a little wooded area. And I watch him load the gun up, and he fires a couple of shots into the woods. And it wasn't silent, okay, but it muffled the noise enough to make you wonder what you just heard. To me, it sounded like, you know, those old-fashioned wooden screen doors, and they had that thing it closes it back and it snaps back and forth. It's on rollers. Maybe you're too young, but my grandparents had. Yep. Okay, maybe your father or your grandparents had one. Well, it sounded like one of those screen doors slamming. That's what it sounded like. It didn't sound like a gunshot. So I was impressed. So we make a deal to buy the gun the next day, and I leave. He leaves. So I follow him. I let him get away, and I follow him. So now I know where he lives, and I knew his name. I knew his first name, and the informant told me his last name, and I know where he went. So we're gonna wait to buy the gun the next day. I called the boss, told him what happened, and everything's okay. I'm okay. But what I did do is I circled back to the park, and I went with a flashlight. And I found those empty cartridge cases that the Ruger 1022 semi-automatic rifle ejected. Because I had to have some evidence, and that was the best evidence I had. So I picked it up. I found about 3 or 4 of them, and I brought them to work the next morning, and I entered them into evidence. So when we called the guy the next day, Typical. We can't get a hold of him. Never buy the gun. Never get the gun from him. But now I got a bigger problem to deal with. We'll deal with him. We'll find him. We'll probably buy the gun later. We figure, but I've got to stay and roll. I've got all these other.
Right.
I've got a CI to protect. I've dealing with all these people. I've got other people that are wanting to do business with us. So now we got to get out of this predicament of what do we do about the shotgun that I'm supposed to give back, because we ain't giving it back. So we come up with this plan, right? We're all sitting around the squad room, We come up with this plan. Say, look, we got a guy that hangs around with all these other guys that's always bothering us, looking to work with us, right? He thinks we're bad guys, right? So he said, let's get this guy. His first name began with a T. Let's get T involved in this, and let's tell him we're gonna hold up a card game in the Lenox Hotel in Boston. Now, the Lenox Hotel in Boston was notorious for the wise guys in Boston to rent a room up in the penthouse, and they would have these high stakes card games, big card games. Yeah, I mean, lots and lots of bucks were passing through the table. They were all illegal games, but it was in the Lenox Hotel. So we said, look, it's kind of like amongst like the underworld and the people that want to be in the underworld in Boston. Everybody knew about this, the reputation there. So we said, let's get T and tell him we want him to be the driver, the getaway driver, because we're going to hold up a card game in the Lenox Hotel, and we're going to use the sawed-off shotgun. Right? So we got several of us, and they're all working undercover. And we get T to drive us in his car, and we pull up to the hotel. We've got one of the guys has got the shotgun in a gym bag, and we walk into the hotel, and we leave T out in the car because he's the getaway driver, right? So he sees us go in. He knows the shotgun is in the gym bag, and we go inside the hotel, and we go to the men's room or something. We killed a few minutes in there. But then we come out, and when we hit the front steps of the hotel, we run down the front steps like we just did something wrong. And now there's security guys at the front steps wondering what the hell we just did, that we ran out of the hotel and we jumped into this car. So when we did that, one of the guys who had the gym bag with the shotgun in it, we had him walk away and not jump in the car, because now nobody wants to get caught in a getaway car with a sawed-off shotgun. We had a bag full of money, and we let the shotgun walk with one of the undercover agents. So what happens is now T thinks that this is all for real, and he's driving through the streets of Boston like a maniac, trying to get away, right? And we're trying to tell him, slow down, man, slow down, because now we're worried he's going to kill us all in a car accident. So we said, look, slow down. We got the money in the car. We're away. Don't worry about it. We're going to be okay. So what we do is we get to the parking lot where we had our cars. T drops us off. We give T a couple of $100 and send him off on his way. And so the next day, we tell T, hey, so-and-so who was walking down the street with the gym bag with the shotgun, he got stopped by the cops. They arrested him. They seized the shotgun. So now we got to tell all your guys, all your friends, what happened. So now T is vouching for us that, yeah, they robbed this card game, and they split up, and they were really smart. And one guy was walking off with the shotgun in the bag, and he got popped by the cops. And that's why they can't get the shotgun back. And that sort of calmed everybody down. It got us off the hook on having to return that sawed-off shotgun. So now I'm going to fast forward to a year or so later, when we started arresting all the people that we were involved with guns, buying guns and stuff. And we finally get around to arresting the guy with the sawed-off rifle with the silencer on it that originally wanted to shoot me. And thank God he didn't. If it was, the other guy wanted him to shoot me more than he wanted to shoot me because he didn't even know me. But we arrest him, and we go to court. So now he gets convicted. It's purely on my testimony and those backed up by those expended cartridge cases that I had picked up in the park that night. And he gets convicted in the first case in the state of Massachusetts where somebody was convicted of firearms possession without the gun being put into evidence. So the prosecutor was very proud of that. I could give a shit one way or the other. But the prosecutor was very, very, very proud of that. Later on, after the fallout of all these people getting arrested, we're starting to pop up more cooperators. And one guy finally pops up, a guy that ran a stolen car auto body place, which the guy that had the sawed-off rifle and the silencer, he was stealing cars and bringing them into this chop shop for this guy, right? So I guess that
entrepreneurial.
Yeah. So I guess when this guy with the gun went down, the guy running the chop shop figures, I must be next. I better get some good, build up some good graces with these feds. So I'm going to turn over the gun that with the silencer on it. And when I got it back, when I finally got it, it was the same gun, but somebody had sanded the gun down. They were going to refinish it, I guess. It had been like a dark maple in color, and somebody sanded it down with sandpaper, all the wood parts of the firearm. And I guess they were going to refinish it. But that was the only difference. It still had the silencer attached, but the guy with it, he was convicted. The only thing is, we brought him to state court. Had we had the gun and the silencer, we would have brought him to federal court with a sawed-off rifle and a silencer. That would have been a 20-year beef on each of those counts. Wow. So he made out. He lucked out. I think he only, one of the things that had happened is just, I think it was in 75, 76, there was a new law passed in Boston called the Fox-Bartley Act. And it provided a 1-year mandatory sentence for anybody in illegal possession of a firearm. So all the hoods in the area were all very aware of that. And they were aware that there was cops and feds all over the place trying to catch people with illegal guns. But so, I mean, that's that story, right?
What do you mean, that story?
Well, we met, one of the people we met at this bar was a gal, and she was Scottish, and she would be in there all the time, and she thought she was a half a criminal, and she tells us that she's got a couple of guys who got a gun for sale, and they're living with her, staying with her. What we find out from the informant that we have there is that these guys are escapees from Walpole prison, and she's hiding them out. They had walked away from a work detail, and they're wanted, and they got a gun. So we know who they are, and one of them's got a really, really bad record. And so I'm going to go there now, and I'm going to go to her house. She's going to introduce me to them, but they're looking for stuff, you got to have something that you can give rather than always take. So we were selling, we were posing like we were selling stolen leather coats, that we had a truck hijacked full of stolen leather coats, leather jackets. This is heavy.
You're this is like an episode of The Sopranos.
Yeah, that's what it was. And so I actually, this was before that movie, right?
Yeah.
And so we're always carrying these leather coats around that we bought at the Burlington Coat Factory, right? And we paid top dollar for them, and we would sell them at a loss, right? But just to get good grace, getting people's good graces. So I go there and I meet these guys. I talk to these guys. Now they're two escaped criminals, and I'm asking you, like, well, what size do you want? Well, what style do you want? We got all kinds of things. So they tell me, and they tell me they've got a handgun for sale. I think it was a high standard or a Harrington Richardson revolver, long barrel revolver for sale. And so I said, okay, well, let me get the coats and we'll come back and we'll make a deal. So we go to the Burlington Coat Factory. We pick out the coats that they asked for. And we set up another meeting with this Scottish gal and go over to her house. And the guys try the coats on and they like them and everything else. And so they're going to trade the gun for the coats, right? They had a bad record. We want to get the gun off the street because they're going to do nothing but bad stuff with it anyway. So, but what happens is now, because these guys were escaped prisoners, and because one of them had a really bad, serious, violent record, the boss says, you're going to have a cover team this time, and you're going to wear a wire in there. And I said, I don't want to wear a wire, man. Suppose these guys pat me down. No, you're going to go in. You're going to wear a wire. So they set me up. They install a transmitter on me, and I go in with the leather coats, and now this guy that's got the bad record, one of them, he's got the gun, and he's got it loaded, and he's waving it around, and he's half. I think he was half juiced up. And he's like, yeah, man, when you take this thing, you go in and you hold the guy up and you stick the gun in his head, and he puts the gun in my head, right? And it's loaded, right? And he's like all erratic. So, I take the gun and I push it away. I say, hey, point it in the other direction. So now he's so excited to demonstrate to me what he does with this gun and how effective it's going to be to scare people. And we're in the projects now, right? We're in the housing projects. We're in some apartment, and there's in a row of brick, 1-story projects. And he opens the back door and he fires the gun out the back door into the courtyard. And now all I'm thinking of is, my guys are going to hear this, and they're going to come busting through the door, and somebody's going to get shot, and this whole undercover thing is going to be blown. My informant's going to get killed, and this is all going through my mind like in a split second. So I say, hey, I figure I've got to tell my guys that I'm okay. I say, hey, don't be shooting that gun out the door like that. There's people out there. I said, put that gun, give me that gun. So I let them know that I was okay. And that was the only thing they said later when I went outside. The only thing that kept the cavalry from running in was they heard my voice and they heard me. It was obvious that I had the situation still under control in there. Or else I can't imagine. Probably this guy with the gun would probably get shot, because these guys that were coming in, one of them was on the ATF national pistol team, and this guy could hit a fly like 1,000 yards. But so again, I buy the gun, I get out of there. And we hang that up, and later on we go and get those guys, and this one guy, he gets sent back to prison. Actually, they both get sent back to prison because they were escapees at the time.
Wow.
But so these are the kinds of things that this was a lot of the undercover work that we did, and even today, a lot of undercover guys, this is the kind of stuff they do. They might go, like I say, they might go undercover. I think the longest I ever went undercover and lived somewhere was when I was on the job in Boston with ATF. I was on the job for 2 weeks. I had been a cop. Um, they wanted somebody to work with an informant up in Portland, Maine. And I said, Portland, Maine? What the hell's going on in Portland, Maine? Said, hey, well, we want you to go up there, work with so and so, and he needs an undercover guy, and it's got to be somebody from Massachusetts because selling guns to out of state residents is another crime. So they wanted somebody that actually lived in Massachusetts, or should I say, lived outside of the state of Maine. So I went up there and I meet this informant, and now I probably lived up there for 3 weeks, and I am getting introduced to all kinds of people day after day after day. They bring me to one house. It was a bunch of bikers in the house, right? And there's one guy sitting there all ragged out. I mean, he looked big beard, and he's got a big hunting knife, and he's sharpening it on a stone. And so I walk in, and this guy, we called him Schneider, right? You know the guy that was one of those TV shows. He was a janitor. His name was Schneider. We called this guy Schneider because he was a janitor. Anyway, well, one day at a time. Thanks. Somebody helped me back there in the other room. One day at a time.
Your audience.
Yeah, I got an audience back there. My producer's back there feeding stuff to me. But anyway, we called this guy Schneider, right? So Schneider introduces me to, hey, this is so-and-so. This is Pepe from Boston. And, he's looking for some pieces to bring down there. They're hard to get, blah, blah, blah. So the guy's sharpening this big hunting knife and looks up to me and says, and I'm the butcher.
Oof.
So, okay, hey, butcher, how you doing, man? Right?
Yeah.
So we started buying guns from those guys, and I would buy the guns. Every time I'd buy guns, and I was buying guns every day there because I thought that I was going to Portland, Maine, and I was going to the boondocks. This city was a mecca. Everybody on the street was a criminal. I swear to God, they hung around the Dunkin' Donuts there. They were all criminals. The women were criminals. The men were criminals. They were all young. They were all nuts. It was nuts there, right? The after hours places. So I was living up there for 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I would buy the guns and I would bring them back to this hotel. I was staying in a hotel right on the main drag, right up the street from that Dunkin' Donuts. And I'd bring the guns into the back door of the hotel, and I'd go into the bathroom, and I'd hide the guns up in the suspended ceiling because I didn't want the maids or anybody to find the guns. And after I had enough guns up in the suspended ceiling where it was starting to sag, I'd call the office there in Portland and say, somebody's got to come here and meet me and take these guns back. And I would write a bunch of handwritten notes. I kept them up there too. And I would give them my reports, handwritten notes back to take back with them. And we would do this every couple of days. So one day they come to me, Schneider comes to me and says, hey, I got a guy. His name was Eric Von Campbell. I'll never forget Eric Von Campbell. Eric Von Campbell was about a 6'8" African-American guy, about 350 pounds.
Mm.
And he had been a previous ATF defendant. So he knew what ATF was. 99.9% of the people I ever met when I first came on the job never heard of ATF or knew what ATF stood for or what it did. But Eric Von Campbell did. So I get introduced to Eric Von Campbell. He tells me, he said, look, I run this town. I run prostitutes. I run drugs. I run the after hours clubs. And I run guns. Whatever you want, I'll get you. So I said, I want to buy some guns. So I'm driving at this time, they had given me a Cadillac convertible to drive, right? And because I'm supposed to be some half a mobster out of Boston. And they give me this caddy convertible to drive, and I'm driving around smoking a cigar all around Portland. And with Schneider with me, right? And we're smoking cigars. And if we go into a convenience store and there's these little kids trying to steal ice cream out of the freezer, and the guy behind the counter, "Hey, you goddamn kids, get out of here!" I said, "Wait a minute, come here, kids. What do you want? Ice cream? Pick out what you want." And and I put down $20 and I bought the kids ice cream, And oh, you're a good guy, man. Yeah. All right, okay. So anyway, I'm making a name for myself. The guy in the Cadillac convertible, little short guy, right? And so anyway, Morris Von Campbell, the cover team now says Morris Von Campbell is a really bad dude. We've had a case against. He says we've had a case against him, so he knows what the game is, and he shouldn't even be wanting to sell anybody guns because he's been caught doing this before. And I said, and what? Well, he's a convicted felon. I said, well, what's he convicted of? He says he murdered his mother with an axe. I said, what? He murdered his mother with an axe. So I said, okay. So they said, we're going to follow you. We're going to put a cover team on you because Morris wants to take me in my car and have me drive him around to all these other places. So I'm driving Morris Von Campbell around in my Cadillac convertible, and he's like, stop here. And he goes inside. He comes out a couple minutes later, and he's got a little blanket, and he's got a couple of guns. And I say, how much you want for this one? How much you want for that one? And, I try to bargain with him, when I worked undercover, look, when I was a kid and I grew up in the neighborhood, I was used to this type of thing. My friends were either criminals or one was a priest and a couple of them were cops. But you were either on one side or the other. And everybody was running a scam, and stolen goods and fireworks and that kind of stuff was always floating around the corner where we all hung around. So I knew how to deal with this stuff. And I knew that, stolen goods, they're about worth a third of their value if they're new. Anything else, you bring the price down. So I bargained with them, and it's part of the whole legitimacy. I made believe I was spending my own money on this stuff, no matter what I was buying, so that I wasn't going to buy it if I didn't feel it was a value. The truth be known is we don't let any guns walk. But a lot of the times I was able to convince them, you know what, next time you got something, I might throw something your way, blah, blah, blah. So Morris Von Campbell, we make a couple of more stops. And now I'm driving, right? And I'm looking in my rearview mirror as we're making all these turns, twists and turns through the city of Portland, stopping at all these different houses. I bought about 7 guns from them that night. And I'm looking at them saying, I was on the job 2 weeks. I said, these ATF guys are really good following people because I can't see them in my rearview mirror, right? I don't know how they're watching me. So we make all the stops. It took about 45 minutes, an hour to make these several stops. And I drop Morris Von Campbell off, and I drive back to the parking lot where we're going to meet. And I'm waiting for these guys, and they're not coming. All of a sudden, about 10, 15 minutes later, the cover cars come screaming into the parking lot, and they jump out of the cars. Are you all right? Are you all right? I said, yeah, I'm all right. They said, we lost you after the first turn you took. I said, you mean you guys weren't following me the whole time? They said, no, we lost you.
Wow. They were praying.
So that day I learned, right? That day I learned that that little Charter Arms that I was carrying on my hip was probably going to be my only friend one of these days, right?
Wow.
But what else happened? That was Morris Von Campbell.
Wow, that's oh gosh, I don't know how you top that.
So here's how you top it, right? So we go to trial, and there's this young prosecutor, a woman, young prosecutor for the government, and she's prosecuting the case. And in later years, she becomes the U.S. attorney for the District of Maine. But back then, she was simply an assistant U.S. attorney. And she's asking me, Agent Gagliardi, what did Mr. Van Campbell say to you? And I said, well, he told me that he runs drugs, prostitution, after hours clubs, and guns, and anything I want illegal, he's the man to come and see. So Morris Von Campbell then takes the stand. And Morris Von Campbell denies all of this, right? So this is classic, right? She puts me back on the stand after he testifies for rebuttal. And she says, Agent Gagliardi, I'm going to ask you the same question again. So she asked me, he says, what did Morris Von Campbell say to you? I said, he said he runs prostitutes, he runs drugs, he runs guns, he runs after hours place, and anything I want illegal, I need to come and see him. And now the judge sitting on the bench, the hanging judge, takes his glasses, puts them down like this, and just stares over the bench at Morris Von Campbell like boom, mic drop. Morris Von Campbell, needless to say, got no mercy from this judge when he got convicted, and he was gone.
Wow.
But anyway, that's so.
That's your story or your stories.
Well,
and you're sticking to it.
Want to hear a couple more short ones? I mean, I
Nope,
go.
we're gonna save them for another time. This is Pete. This is. You sure the Sopranos didn't model after you?
I don't know, but like I say, I grew up in a place where it served me well, and the experiences I had as a cop on the street, especially a plainclothes cop in the project, served me even better. You know, as you know, Ray, police work is all about being able to talk to people and exercise common sense and good judgment. And you got to know what makes people tick. And here I am at 5 foot nothing, right? 5'5" and no inches, right? And what am I going to do? I'm going to portray myself as some great big tough guy and fight everybody. No, I had to be smarter than that,
Yes.
right? I had to be smarter than that. So I had to be able to deal with these people because I had to deal with them my whole life growing up, right? And I knew how to deal with people. You know, when I was a cop, I had a partner, and my partner was much taller than I. And we'd knock on the door and we'd get involved in a domestic dispute. And the first guy to get a punch in the face was him. Nobody ever hit me. I said, how come they always want to hit you? Right. I mean, I think it was everybody didn't want to be able to say that the little guy beat him. I don't know. Maybe that's part of it. But not that we would shy away from that. I mean, we did our share at the time, knock on wood. But in any event, you had to know how to deal with people. You can't fight with people every day. That's not gonna be the way to keep you going home to your family every night, or vice versa. Keep them going home to their family every night. It wasn't our job. We didn't want to hurt anyone. We wanted to do our job, keep the peace, and do what we needed to do. But the stories I got, I mean, I would not trade. If I should write them all down because
you should.
Because funny that, I mean, you know, in the projects we go to a fire.
Save these stories. We're gonna have you back. This is great. I mean,
I'm going to tell you about the time we went to the fire on the 11th floor of the high rise, and what happened. We wound up breaking the lady's leg, but not on purpose. No, I got to tell you the story.
All right, go ahead. One more. All right,
so we get a call that there's a fire in one of the apartments in the high rise on the 11th floor, and what that meant is that you got to run up the stairs of the 11 flights, because if you get in the elevator, the kids see you get in the elevator and they kick the elevator door, and that makes the safety switch disengage, and the elevators, you get stuck between floors, and you're there for like 2 hours before the Otis elevator guy comes and gets you out. So you never take the elevator. So you run up we ran up 11 flights, and we get to the apartment, and we knock on the door, and lady go, who? We said, please open the door, there's a fire in there. No, there's no fire in here. And now there's smoke coming under the door. It's like just bellowing out from under the door. So he said, open the door. And she won't open the door. So we kicked the door in, right? But the doors are solid. We can't see what's behind the door. The door is solid. We kicked the door open. She was standing right behind the door. She goes flying backwards.
Wow.
And she falls ass first into one of these galvanized big metal trash cans.
Oh, trash.
And she's stuck in there. And her butt's down the bottom of the trash can. And her feet are sticking out. And her hands are sticking out. But what happens is we pull her out of the trash can. And now she's complaining that her leg hurts, right? So we call for the emergency unit. And they call for an ambulance, and she goes to the hospital. And when she fell in the trash can, she broke her femur.
Oh, gosh.
And well, she cracked it. When it was a green stick, a break where it didn't break completely, but she cracked her femur when she went into the trash can. But she was going to burn the place down. I mean, I don't know what she was doing in there, why she wouldn't let us in. But the place was engaged, man, in fire, and we pulled her out of there. And by this time, the fire guys got there and put it out. But all kinds of crazy stuff would happen like that all the time.
Well, we're going to have you on again because these are good stories. We will actually entitle them a compilation of Pete's short stories.
Yeah, short stories.
Yeah, I didn't say it for that reason, but short stories.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hey, Pete. Thank you. This was you put a smile on my face, and I can just visualize it. Whatever happened to the Torino?
The blizzard of 1978, right? It's like 4:00 in the afternoon in Boston. It's starting to snow like a bastard. It takes me like an hour to get out of Boston onto the highway right next to me. It takes me an hour to get out onto the highway. And now I'm heading 40 miles down to Plymouth. And by this time, you can't see a thing. The road's got like 1.5 feet of snow on them. No plows can be out there. The worst thing was you're blinded by the snowstorm. You have no frame of reference. I was looking up at the sky that had some light to it, and I was able to just know where the sides of the highway were. And I said, well, if I know where the sides are, I'll stay in the middle. And I was only able to drive about 10, 15 miles an hour. But once you stopped, you could not start again. So this Ford Torino got me home, and I'm driving, and all of a sudden, out of the blinding snow, there's a car in front of you, and you swerve, and you try not to lose control and go off the side of the road because nobody will ever find you again. And so I'm still pushing that Torino. It got me all the way home to Plymouth, and it got me almost into my driveway where I started to make the turn, and I couldn't get the whole car in the driveway, but that's where it stopped. And the next day there was like 3.5 feet of snow. I mean, people were stuck on the highways. They couldn't get home that night. Hundreds and hundreds of cars were just stopped, and people spent the night shivering in their cars until the next day, probably 3:00 in the afternoon, when they had all these tow trucks and snow plows pulling them out. But that Ford Torino was good, and I got to tell you, I don't know whatever happened to it. But the time that I had it served me well.
Wow.
And they had a very short rear end on that car.
Yes.
And you would think it wouldn't be good, but it got me through the snow of the blizzard of 78. So God bless it.
Wow. All right, Pete. Thank you. Thank you for a great show here.
See you later.
See you.